Thanks for being here with us today for this YouTube Live, How to Improve Collaboration and Results on Your Product Team with Viva Goals and ADO, Azure DevOps, to talk to Mark Myers, Senior Program Manager within the Engineering Excellence Team in Digital Security and Resilience, where he steers the strategic trajectory of the entire organization through his dual responsibilities as the OKR champion and the primary liaison for Viva Goals. And Johnny Jones, Senior Technical Program Manager with the Endpoint Protection Services team under Microsoft Security Response Center, where he acts as the point of contact for OKR planning and Viva Goals. We're lucky to have Mark and Johnny with us today. Welcome, Mark and Johnny.
Thanks for the warm welcome, Lucy. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, very happy to be here and speak on our experience.
Yeah, so just to give folks a little color on how Mark and Johnny happen to be here today, we have a really robust internal OKR champs community in Microsoft from folks across the entire company of Microsoft. And I tuned in one day to one of these really highly engaged calls and heard Mark and Johnny talk about their journey with Viva Goals, how they use it with Azure DevOps, and how they kind of create this very harmonious and like elegant structure for that, which a lot of our customers have questions about. And I said, we have to bring this to the people. So here we are. And I think you're going to be really blown away by the level of thought and effort put in here and the impact. And in a week or so, we'll also have a playbook available for everyone to consume and hopefully use and leverage that shares their learnings that they actually built for the internal team. So stay tuned for that. And we'll include that in the blog post, which we'll have after this event. So if you have questions, please add them to the discussion below this video box if you're tuning in live on the event page in the community, and we'll get to them. Either throughout, I'll weave them in, or we'll get to them at the very end. And so with that, in your own words, Mark, would love for you just to share your role, which I covered a little bit, but just in your own words, and then your organization within Microsoft and what you're responsible for.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. Appreciate it. So as you'd mentioned, Senior Program Manager in DSR. I work in the so we call Digital Security and Resilience Engineering Excellence Team, so we call it DSREE. My primary roles, as you had mentioned, were really around being the objective and key result champion. So for all of DSR, I really own all of the OKR pieces, really trying to elevate our conversations, et cetera, driving the strategy and planning. So really as our LT, our leadership team delivers our strategy for our annual planning cycles. I help to drive that throughout the organization, and also the key Viva Goals liaison for DSR. So all of those things. DSRE really is three things. So when you think about what we do, we drive program management, we drive engineering fundamentals, and we drive the consistency of the reporting and metrics. So we're accountable, responsible, and really provide guidance for consistency, effectiveness, and really how do we across DSR drive those for those different areas.
Thank you. Over to you, Johnny. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in the org.
Of course, I don't have to follow Mark in his beautiful explanation of his team, but my name is Johnny Jones. I'm on the Endpoint Protection Services team, which is under the Microsoft Security Response Center. Our focus on our team is to protect internal Microsoft endpoints specifically. My role on the team, I'm the technical program manager, so I'm a senior technical program manager here at Microsoft. I'm the conduit between the product managers and the engineers on our team. So that actually naturally brought me over to Viva Goals utilizing ADO. So I'm really excited to speak about that. I do act as an OKR lead for the MSRC team, which is what brought me to Mark Myers and this incredible tool that we're going to be speaking about today.
Great, thank you for being here. So can you give us, and we'll start with Mark here, a high-level overview of how you started your Viva Goals journey, kind of the challenges, solutions, benefits you've seen so far, and we'll start with Mark.
Yeah, no, thanks, Lucy. I think for us, it really started with, how do we get our tools to tell our story? And ADO is awesome from an engineering and development standpoint, but we really struggled with that consistency and telling the story from a status or program management perspective or leadership perspective. So we just weren't getting where we needed with ADO. So we had some challenges with the business impact versus really talking about weeds. When you're in ADO, we really get into the details, and we needed to really elevate above that. And that's what Viva Goals provides us. And then you look at the consistency with, progress, status, dashboards, all those sorts of things. That's what we were looking for, and Viva Goals provided that. In addition to that, it was really the alignment work or the dependency management. We struggled with that with ADO, and Viva Goals does an awesome job, and we'll share that in a little bit with the cool mapping and the visuals that you get with Viva Goals specifically to aligning. So really, when you would talk about where we were struggling with altitude, alignment, consistency, Viva Goals provided that.
Thank you. And Johnny, tell us a little bit about your perspective here.
Yeah, of course. So just like Mark said, one of our issues was how do we tell our story? And one thing I love to say is Viva Goals is a storytelling tool. It allows me to tell the story of my team and of the journey from starting to completion of our OKRs. How I started in Viva Goals was thinking there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way to showcase what my team is doing. I was on the journey of like, well, I can create a Power BI, figuring all this thing out. And then I met Mark Myers, who showed me this incredible tool. And from an engineering perspective specifically, I'm able to say, our goal is to reach X amount of, let's say, X amount of bugs completed. I can link an ADO item to a Viva Goals item and showcase that without having to bring up an ADO query, which anybody here, which I'm assuming here, ADO pretty well. You have to deal with permissions and all that. And again, there had to be a better way to showcase that than to battle with permissions and figuring out, can you see this? Do you understand what we're talking about? Having a unified way to showcase your progress was amazing. And that's kind of how I started my journey and how I got to where I am now with this.
And digging a little deeper on those initial challenges, what were some of those initial challenges you faced? And you mentioned a few already, Johnny, but that made you realize you needed a better system to track team goals in a consistent way and showcase cross-team collaboration. And Mark, maybe we can start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I think at the org level, as I mentioned before, we were really looking for that PM leadership team, and Johnny had mentioned it a lot too. We needed something more. And, for us, it was ADO, each team, each org would have their own dashboard, their own metrics, their own way that they presented all of the, different work that they were doing, the metrics and things like that. And really, it was really challenging when you would get into an external team conversation. So anything that would expand beyond just your team, let's say at your team's leadership, or we call them service health reviews or monthly business reviews. And you'd get into these, and as these teams came in, you'd have to context shift every time you shifted teams. So it became really challenging there. And, it's really hard as a consumer of that is to, to see that, that context shift every time. So this team did a Power BI, this team did a PowerPoint, this team did an Excel, this team did everything in ADO, and it was really challenging to get there. That was one thing. And then really it's the visibility. So we had a challenge with visibility across the organization. Viva Goals provides that visibility, and obviously with security components and locking down permissions and things like that, you can, tent your environments. But, for us, Viva Goals, it provided us that view into other teams' work, which was great. And then again, as I mentioned before, we really struggled with the alignment piece. So, if Johnny had work that I was dependent upon or vice versa, and it was really hard to get that visibility across teams. Viva Goals provides that. And again, we'll share the align to piece, which is one of my personal favorites. I've used that so much in every presentation I've had, and it's been a game changer. It doesn't matter if it's, Brett Arsenal, our CISO, down to, the team level. That's been super impactful because it shows the hierarchy, and that visual is awesome. And really, another thing is, our leadership spends so much time in Viva Goals now, and ADO was again really awesome when we talk about weeds, but now as we're talking business impact and risk, statements and driving all of those things, and the capabilities and the all-in-one view that we get in Viva Goals, we've been able to elevate the conversation. We can talk business impact, we can make risk trade-offs because we have that information now. And really, the last point is, Viva Goals is a tool for everyone. So, we use the term it's a PM or an LT tool, but that's really not the case. I mean, everybody across the org uses it. We leverage its vast capabilities a ton, and it's really been a game changer for us. So I'll let Johnny touch on the team level, but from an org level, it's really changed our game.
Awesome. Yeah, so from a team level specifically, one of the things that I'm sure anybody here that's watching will attest to is that the meeting is not just the meeting. There's the pre-meeting, there's the preparation for the meeting. And what I found is that we were spending upwards of 10 hours collectively preparing for the 1 hour meeting where we were doing our brief. Now, what we were doing was everybody had a different Word document or PowerPoint or Excel, and when we were briefing, they would switch between those, and you had all the tax of the time of, well, I can't share my screen, hold on, let me figure it out, and then it was all that time that we were spending, not just before the meeting to prep, but even in the meeting where 5 minutes where somebody can't share and you're trying to figure it out, I don't have access to the document. What this solves for us at the team level is twofold. First of all, we go through one initial iteration of setting up all our OKRs in Viva Goals. Then we make sure we have the correct metrics. If we're going to stay above a certain metric, we're trying to reach a certain financial metric. We connect it to the proper integrations, which we'll talk about later. And then that is all the prep time that we would normally use already automated. So now we don't have to worry about how we're going to tell the story or have to deal with, what does that mean? What does that sentence mean when in your brief? You can now state that, as you can see it on this chart you're seeing here, that my OKR is at risk in our marketing. We're at 25%. It's expected to be at 70%. That is easily digestible, and I can speak to that. I don't have a paragraph where I have to ascertain the meeting because I have a Word document or anything like that. And at the team level, it's so much easier because I'm on an engineering team and we want to engineer. We don't want to spend 10, 15 hours with our engineering time trying to prepare a brief. So what this does is it saves engineer time, it saves the PM time, the product manager time, and my role as a TPM, it saves me a lot of time because I'm assuming we're going to go a little later, but all I have to do is type in a thorough check-in, and I don't even have to be at the meeting in the event that I have a conflict or I'm sick. All of my updates are here. So my boss can click on it and say, Johnny put this update in yesterday, and this is where he currently is. These are the blockers he has, and this is the mitigation he's going to go for it. And I don't even have to be at the meeting in the event that something comes up. So this is the most important thing for me on team-based is the asynchronicity, if that's a word, of how this operates. So.
Yeah, and I'll plus on that real quick, Lucy. So at the org level too, all of that stuff rolls up, and the status, the visuals, all of those things are super important. So Johnny made an awesome point about, we don't have to have every single, engineering lead or PM at a meeting. When done right, all of the information is contained within the tool.
Yeah, and I think that's a really common, complaint across product and engineering teams, right? Like we have so much meeting bloat, we don't have enough time to actually do the work we need to do to execute on these items. So I think you can say that the Viva Goals and ADO kind of combination, helps with that. And I love, Mark, what you said around, Viva Goals gives you this more strategic lens with which to talk to leaders and for leaders to use, but also connects it very specifically, like Johnny mentioned, to the work of the team in a very granular way. So there can be this high level, really organization focused view for, the higher level leaders, but then that's also connected to what is actually happening, boots on the ground, for teams who are contributing to these business goals. So with that, I want to shift to our next question. Can you share the difference between how ADO and Viva goals track goals? Because this is often a question we get from product teams and customers that we're talking to is like, well, we kind of track goals in ADO now, and so what would be the why for using Viva goals? Like, how do we track goals differently, et cetera? And I'll start with you, Johnny.
Yes, thank you very much. So Viva goals and ADO, I would say they are very, very tightly intertwined, or you can tightly intertwine them. So I'll start with ADO, then I'll work up to Viva goals. So ADO tracks engineering contribution. You can, yes, put in your goals in the dictation of your feature, or your key result, or objective, or your work item type, whether it be a task or a user story. That would also require several things. One, the person would have to sit and read everything that you're trying to do and ascertain what the overall goal is. Are you trying to reach a certain dollar amount? Are you there? Okay, do I have to read the discussion below the work item type to figure out where you are? Are there a status? Okay, the status is, it's active, where if it's resolved or closed. There's a lot of interpretation that you can take from the dictation within an ADO item. It's also, I would say also, ADO is really good at showing who's doing what work. But what it struggles at is, again, the big picture. Yes, you can create an ADO dashboard. You can create an ADO dashboard and showcase all these different metrics that, but they're all specific to contribution, velocity, capacity, percentage completion of specific work items. But it doesn't roll up to what I would say Mark is looking for at the strategic level of where are you in relation to your overall goals? So that's where Viva Goals comes in. And I'm going to do one more thing before I jump over to Viva Goals is talk about the challenges that you face when you are trying to be a little bit more holistic or bigger picture in ADO, is you run into permission issues, which plagues us currently, because we, as Mark said previously, we do have things that are tinted or things that are restricted to who can actually view them. So now if you're looking at ADO dashboard and you're bringing multiple teams information, you might have blank sections where you don't have permission to view them. And thus you have to figure out how you're going to ascertain the progress. Well, that's where Viva Goals comes in, switching over to that topic. Now, it doesn't matter if I don't have access to it. All I'm looking at is a check-in update and the progress bar. So let's say my progress is I'm trying to reach a financial goal of $1,000 this month. Now, if I connect it to ADO and each one of the user stories that I have represents a certain dollar amount and certain number are closed, I can now see that five user stories are closed. That means $500 are attained. And now the bar shows 50% complete. And I can write a dictation in the check-in note speaking to that. I don't have to worry about permissions. If I build my dashboard, everybody can see it unless I lock it down specifically in Viva Goals. But again, that's something you have to do inherently, not like ADO, which is just kind of a blanket setting. So I would say that the difference between ADO and Viva Goals is that it's meant to be a view over the entire landscape, where ADO is very narrowly scoped at the team and what an individual engineer is doing. I'm sorry, I extrapolated a lot, but I'm very passionate about the relationship between the two.
Yeah, we love your passion, Johnny. That's why we're here. Hey, let me just jump in real quick at the org level. Is everything you mentioned, everything ladders up. So for us, from a leadership perspective, we always start with our annual planning. We focus on our top focus areas from Brett, our CISO level, his direct reports, and then it pyramids down. So the coolest part about the Viva Goals connective tissue is that we can do all those alignments up. So when Brett goes into his dashboard, he can see all of the things that are going to deliver his objective of X. And that's the coolest part about Viva Goals, is, as Johnny had mentioned, it provides that next level of granularity, which is, for us, it's a mind-blowing thing because it's so fun to be able to say, hey, I'm going to go click on Brett's objective and see all of the things that are going to deliver in this fiscal year to that particular objective. And we get to see status on a regular basis. It's all automatically aligned or funneling up with the progress and all those sorts of things. So, as long as it's set up properly, it'll give you everything you need.
I want to add one more thing. And I know we may cover it a little bit later, but I just want to touch on it because it's very related to ADO and Viva Goals. One thing that Viva Goals does very well that ADO a little bit struggles with is understanding your cross-team collaboration and how your work funnels up, exactly what Mark stated. If I have two teams that are collaborating on a key result, in ADO, it's very difficult because you'll have a single owner. Now, you might have multiple children, but then you have to go and follow through multiple tabs and try to figure out what this team is doing. But in Viva Goals, you have a beautiful, beautiful graphic, which you were just showing in the previous slide. You can easily show that my work and Team B's work or Mark's work is also contributing to the overall goal of this organization. So that's one thing that I love about Viva Goals that ADO struggles with, is showcasing that funnel.
Thank you both. That was really great. And this may be a flawed metaphor, but it's almost like ADO is putting together all of the components, like the nuts and bolts and all of the parts of the car. And then Viva Goals is zooming out at the end of it to see the full car and how fast it's going to drive and all of the kind of the components that make it all work together. And I love how you framed it as holistic, Johnny, because that's also feedback we get from a lot of customers, especially in product teams, that it gives them a more holistic view about what's happening across the organization. So what was most appealing about Viva Goals and ultimately the reason why you chose Viva Goals as the system or product to track your goals? I mean, obviously Viva Goals is a Microsoft product, so we know that's part of it. But what made you kind of do that, kind of put in all the effort and momentum here, on your team specifically? And Mark, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think we've touched on it a ton, but really, when you think about the elevation of the conversation, and we as a company have moved, like a lot of companies in the industry, to the objective and key result model, the OKR model. So it's really elevating your conversation. So for us, that Viva Goals, tool provided that really amazing visibility into really taking what we were doing to where we needed to go. We were able to use Viva Goals on that journey of getting from, really the weeds, and ADO does an awesome job. So I want to be very careful. ADO does an amazing job of what it's designed to do. Viva Goals adds that extra component, which is really important for us. So what we were able to do is we were able to see that the teams that we worked with within the Viva Goals organization, unlike any other, just amazing groups to work with. And it was really going through that journey, the tools that were provided, the story that we were able to really see and then live out were really important. The second piece was, as I mentioned before, is elevating the conversation in the reviews with leadership, with other teams, of getting out of the weeds and getting up into that, driving what the business impact is. So, the term which a lot of people hate is moving the needle. So Viva Goals does a much better job of really telling the story and showing how are we going to move the needle by delivering this work. The third thing that we really got out of this, and this is where we're going to talk on, and is really about dependency weighting, t-shirt sizing, use the term you want. This is an amazing function in Viva Goals, which you'll see on the image here, is that we can allocate weighting to the children. So whether that's an objective, a key result, or a project, we can say this item has bigger impact on delivering to the objective than this other one. So what's really cool about that is, in the mock-up here, you'll see it's 50, 40, and 10%. So pretty straightforward. When you talk about weighting, that specific objective of deliver 80% of this thing, that's going to have a higher impact to the progress and the status roll-up than the other two. So it's really a neat thing. It's not just peanut butter across 33.3%, but I can actually, allocate different weights to that, and it talks, that's really going to drive, again, if I'm looking at where I'm really, struggling with this particular objective, it's most likely going to be that 50% objective that's, something's hindering there. And it helps us to really drill into the problem areas. So, I can quickly go in and say, okay, what's causing this particular parent objective to be off track, it's most likely that one. So I'll let Jenny touch on the service level stuff, but really for us, it's, Viva Goals has been an absolute game changer at an org level.
And from the team level, if we can use the same graphic here, one of the things that helped us adopt it is Mark's talking about receiving the story. And in our point of view, we're talking about telling that same story. So again, I would like to echo what Mark said. ADO is an incredible tool for what it's built to do. But what if for an example, if I have this key result and these two objectives, and I'm trying to tell the story that the write the best, most impactful objective ever is being delivered. In ADO, you would see, let's say I had 100 user stories. That key result, even though it's weighted 50, would look equal to the others because there's no weighting the same way you have it in Viva Goals. So being able to tell the story that, yes, even though I have 3 stories for this key result, those 3 stories are so much more significant to our overall deliverable. And being able to tell that with the managed contribution that you're showing on the screen right now is extremely important for a service. Because again, it's less things that you have to say, less things that you have to write, less time you have to spend writing those things. So I can tell my story with more front effort and less throughout the overall semester or your planning cycle. But one of the things that I really like about Viva Goals that made my team adopt it is the ability to, again, the asynchronicity of it, being able to put our updates in and have Mark Myers and his team read them without us being in a meeting. Again, save us the meeting bloat, saves us all the preparation. It's so easy to tell your story utilizing this tool that I'm working on figuring out a way to articulate that a little better than this asynchronicity, but it's just, that is the number one thing for a service. The amount of time you're able to save by entering your items in this Viva Goals without having to create multiple documents.
Yeah, and by the way, this is true not just for product teams. This is true for, across all kinds of teams. So, even just the weighting, for instance, let's say you're driving towards a major marketing moment on the marketing team, right? Not every piece of how you get there is equally weighted in terms of the success of the event and in terms of the, metrics and outcomes you're trying to drive, right? So being able to both weight and also phase out different components really helps you get a clear representation of, where you're at. And to your point, Donnie, saving you that time so you can be more productive, in other areas, as opposed to, just going to a meeting simply to provide very, fundamental progress updates. So I want to move on to our next question. How do you use Viva Goals to share to the wider organization the impact your team is having on the company? So Mark, you've touched on this, a bunch in terms of, hey, it's really important that we're able to frame these conversations with leadership in a more strategic way, but also share the work of the team. So just hoping you can provide a little more of the how and what that looks like for you here. And we'll start with you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. I think one thing that I've neglected to mention, and I think it's really important, is, when we think about ADO, it was really focused on engineering and development teams, and you made an excellent point about marketing. And that triggered something in me, is that we've actually been able to integrate not just our engineering developer teams, but our business operations teams, our incident response teams, and a lot of those into Viva Goals, because we've been able to really tell the story. So it's not just, the teams that are fingers on keyboard, doing the coding and doing the engineering, but it's actually we've been able to have lots of really cool, impactful, conversations at, finance and HR and a lot of those things as we drive through that. So I wanted to make sure I landed that too. But really, as we've touched on it a ton, but when you think about the conversations that we're having, we're able to tell a more robust, detailed, focused story, driving, the business impact. And I think what's most important is the measurables, and we're able to really deliver on, how do we actually go and deliver this cybersecurity, objective. Here are the 5 key triggers or the measurables that we're able to do, and we're able to really tell the full, holistic, I'll use Johnny's term too, I think it's really important, is holistic story from, what it is we're going to deliver, how we're going to deliver it, why we're going to deliver it, and then how do we know it's done. So the definition of done is really important. We've touched on it a ton too, just about the progress tracking. It's, Viva Goals provide such an amazing view quickly. I can quickly go into a dashboard, see where we're off track. I can drill into all of the different alignment pieces to show where we're at, where we're on and off track. It's got an amazing progress chart. So it shows where we should be to where we are, as you'll see in the visual there. But progress tracking has been a game changer for us. And again, it goes back to what I'd said earlier. We don't have to context switch in every conversation. The views are consistent, whether from one team to the next, from Johnny's team to my team to somebody else's team, we get that consistent view and feel. And the other big thing for us is really around, no more PowerPoints. We were taking all of these amazing Power BI dashboards, all of these metrics, and copying and pasting them from a tool into PowerPoint and using those. And now everything's integrated into one tool. So, we're not spending, as Johnny had mentioned, we were spending hours and hours prepping for meetings by copying and pasting. So, we're moving from a meeting centric, like, are we a meeting team or are we a production team? So Viva Goals really helps us to navigate that move. And now we don't have to spend all this prep time. I mean, it will take time to get the Viva Goals right for every organization, but once you get there, it's not copy and paste and spending a bunch of cycles doing it. As John had mentioned, the check-in functionality has been awesome. So, for us, it's just been an absolute game changer from that perspective as well.
Johnny, would you like to add anything there?
Yeah, of course. From the team or the service perspective, I love this graphic you have up here, right here. So we can leave it here. I want to speak to this, but as a TPM, it's my job to not only take the product forward by having a conduit to putting the requirements over to engineering, but it's also my job to ensure that engineers know the work they're doing contributes to the overall picture. It's not, I have this one work item and I have to do this one work item and then I move on to the next. We all operate off of passion and feeling like you're a part of the larger organization. And Viva Goals allows me to sit and showcase, yes, you have this one work item. It contributes to this PR, which contributes to this objective, which contributes to this overall strategy that the organization has set forth. So being able to not only showcase all the progress that we're having that's meeting that strategy, but showcasing where your work, how your work contributes to that strategy to those who are actually doing the work. That brings them more pride. I'm working towards this thing that our CISO, CISO, or our leadership is leading us towards, and you feel like you're a part of the solution as a whole. So I love being able to provide that visibility to the engineers on our team. But I also like being able to showcase, as you see here, the phase targets, where you're showcasing where you're going to be throughout the semester. Being able to speak to that also allows other teams to have an understanding of when our deliverables are going to be and where the ebbs and flows throughout the semester or the planning cycle will be. So I think that allows us to have a lot of impact on the overall strategy, stating, yes, we're going to be delivering this at this time, but we're going to have a stagnation for a couple of weeks or so while we're working on something, and then we're going to have a spike as we deliver it. Those type of things are really, really beneficial to showcase to Mark's team, who runs the strategy.
I love that. And I love the point you made about this doesn't just go one way to leadership. It goes, for the folks for the teams actually working on these projects that are going to, move the needle, to use that term that some people love, some people hate, for the organization. It gives them visibility too into exactly what they're contributing to, which I think is really important. And I'm glad you hit on that. So do you have any practical tips or actions our audience can implement to get a goals program deployed and drive adoption, especially if they have a specific use case for it, as your team did. And Mark, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, no, thanks, Lucy. I think for us, it was really, we wanted to establish a baseline, and as we talk about Viva Goals being that tool to help us drive consistency across the org, it was important to really build a framework. So to do that, for us, it was really, we wanted to establish a pilot group. So we've got 1,800 employees. We've got, a ton of service groups. So I think we're at 160 different service groups. So it was really important for us to have a crosscut and, different, individuals to join that pilot group so we can go cross-organizational and understanding how everybody used ADO so we could really leverage a cool springboard into taking them from ADO to Viva Goals. And we wanted to understand their pain points, their frustrations, their struggles. We wanted to understand how they built their dashboards, their metrics, and all those sorts of things. So that pilot group really helped us to establish that framework and understanding, if we drive to one consistent platform or playbook, which we'll touch on in a few minutes, what are those principles that we need to establish? What are those consistent components that we need to build into that? That was one thing that was really important. So that pilot group, which Johnny was a stinking rock star in and drove a ton of that, really helped us to understand our environment, understand our company, and how we did things. The second thing was really from a stakeholders perspective is we kept all of our stakeholders engaged. It didn't matter if it was an individual contributor all the way up to our CISO, is making sure that, as we went through the process, here are the things we're seeing, here's our schedule, here's the risks, the wins, and those sorts of things. So, making sure that they were aware of, hey, we've got this really awesome functionality that's going to be available to you in 2 months. Here's a view of it, but stay tuned, it's coming soon, but this is going to help move the needle. So it was important for us to keep them not only engaged, but excited as we went through the process. The third thing was, as I mentioned before, the product group, the Viva Goals product group was absolutely amazing. And so for us, it was all of the features, the bugs, all of those things that we were able to work through, is making sure you have that consistent, conversation back through your decision makers and the people that can, really drive that conversation with our product group, what's really important. And then a couple other things, which is really once we completed the pilot, it was really hosting a series of trainings. So I'm going to continue to, beat the drum of the amazing Johnny Jones, but, he really took it upon himself to build a really cool training module. So Viva Goals provides an amazing framework, like at a high level, but it really, for us, it was taking it from here's how you could do it to here's how we are going to do it. So we went through a series of training to say, DSR does it this way. So we set up our objectives this way, our key results look this way. Here's a templated dashboard. Here's what we expect, from every team as we go down the path. So that part was great. And then the last piece was really, as we went to the go live piece was, really making sure we were communicating across the organization outside the pilot group, but to everybody. Here's the things that are coming. Here's when it's coming. The whole build it and they will come process, aspect was that we started building, we started having office hours. So every week people could come and start to understand it. But really the LT was, this is going live May 1st. And then we did the work back schedule to say, okay, we need our teams, all trained, we need them all, educated, but we also need to make sure that they feel like they're locked in and loaded. So all of those things built into that go live. So May 1st, we lit it up and our teams were all ready to go. We were able to really just hit the ground running. So, and Johnny can touch more on the service level stuff, but it was a lot of work, there's no question about it, but that change management piece was really important. The organizational change management piece was super important. Driving the impact, why is this important? Why are we going to this new tool? What's it going to deliver for you? The what's in it for me piece was the last thing I wanted to cover. So we wanted to make sure that no matter where you were within the organization, no matter what your role was, we wanted you to feel committed and that you understood why that this was important for you.
Johnny, over to you.
Yeah, so from the service piece, there's a saying, I come from military background, there's a saying that we always say is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So rushing through a product adoption, you're going to trip a lot. You're going to have people that are misaligned. They don't fully understand. You might not have full buy-in, and you're going to have pushback. So slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So just like Mark said, getting LT buy-in, ensuring everybody understands the why, understands the adoption date. They're provided with a lot of communication, and information is key. So that's why we created the playbook. We provided office hours, Q&A periods. But one of the most important things after all of those things is to have points of contacts, or champions as we call them, on each team to act on your behalf, because the pilot group, or the team that's going to be bringing this into your organization, they will be overwhelmed if they have, like we have 1,800 people that are all asking you questions. So having points of contact on those teams that you can train up in this pilot group will allow you to not only have an audience that you can pass off updates to, and then they can pass off updates to their own teams. And so that you're controlling the narrative, so everybody's aligned with what the changes are, but also you understand that they're going to be handling, like I was handling on our team, the questions and the conflicts, because adopting any tool can be difficult in general. But even if you start from nothing, going from nothing to something can be difficult while you're learning the something. So understanding and being empathetic with the fact that they are going to be changes, and they're going to have a little bit of growing pains with the why and the how and all that. I think it's very important to have the point of context so that you can affect that change. And stakeholders is not only the leadership and those in charge, but stakeholders are also those who are going to have to use the tool day to day. So getting their buy-in, getting their understanding, the what's in it for me, the time saving they're going to have while entering in the tool, not having to do this. All that is very important when you're talking about the adoption of this type of tool, is making sure that everybody's aligned. Alignment is key. As you can tell, that's what I'm focusing my statement on, is alignment and communication, and being empathetic with change is difficult anyway. But rushing through all of those things is very, very, I'd say it's negative. Don't rush through it. Again, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Do it the right way the first time, and then you'll go really smooth. And again, Viva Goals was a very easy tool to provide that adoption, because it did provide so many benefits. So it wasn't very difficult to say that what's in it for you is X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing, Lucy, real quick, is that I think Johnny touched on an important part, is the train the trainer concept. So, it's really important in your large organizations is to make sure you have a team of people that understand it, and it's a domino effect. So we had a group of planning leads, which were absolutely instrumental. So that's what Johnny had mentioned. We had a strategic partner in each of our 5 organizations that drove the conversations, and then they would train their trainers. So as the pyramid kind of expanded, wanted to make sure we continued down that path. So our planning leads were really pivotal on top of our pilot group to go help facilitate the rollout.
Thank you both. I think I'm going to use those words to live by in my professional and personal life. So thank you, Johnny, for the slow is smooth and smooth is fast. We've talked about, I think rituals, train the trainer model, making sure that everyone on the team feels supported as they enter this new tool. And it sounds like also documentation was a really significant part of the successful rollout. So I know I mentioned the playbook, you mentioned the playbook briefly, Johnny, but tell us about this playbook you put together and how other organizations can leverage it. And that will be available again in the blog post, which we share out with this recording. But Mark, did you want to touch on anything before we hand it over to Johnny to walk us through some components?
Briefly, because this is Johnny's baby and it was something that he really helped drive with, all of the great work that we did out of the pilot. But I think it all started with, consistency, use cases, the how-to guides, etc. We wanted to really avoid the sins of the past, trying to get out of the, again, as we touched on multiple times, people are amazing with how they've used ADO, how they've built dashboards. So all of the cool things that Viva Goals does and provides, there were lots of teams that implemented that within their space, but it was contained within their space. So for us, it was, how do we get people out of just staying in their lane and looking across the organization and driving that consistency? So again, that whole view of trying not to, have that tunnel vision, but looking across the organization. So for us, that was really important. And so for that, it was, telling the how does DSR do it was how this whole playbook started, and making sure we drove that consistent view. But again, our incredible architect of this amazing tool that everybody uses on a consistent basis and all that is Johnny. So I want to give him more airtime than me, but for us, it was really a game changer, because the last point I will make, it's really hard to be a single point of contact in a space. So if you can say, somebody comes to you and says, I'm having a struggle with aligning. Well, it's page 8 of the playbook. Go to this playbook versus, having to walk 1,800 people through every question they have. We're able to guide them to this playbook. It's got a great table of contents. It's super easy to navigate. So I'll turn it over to Johnny on that, but it was super, super impactful with how we were able to roll this thing out.
So I would say that thank you very much for the pyramid here. So the number one thing I would say is that the benefits that Viva Goals brings, which is the consistency in view, the single pane of glass, the ease of operation, all of that is caveated off of one thing, making sure there's a consistency on how your team operates within the tool. If I connect my ADO a different way, if I name my objectives in a way that I don't really understand what the goal of it is. If I name my team in such a way that it doesn't really reflect what my team does, then there's inconsistencies. So what we decided to do was to build this document in order to showcase what you should do in order to be in line with how we want to operate in DSR as a whole. So we started with Mark Myers did create this wonderful work item taxonomy. So I'm not gonna say credit for that, Mark, but started with what each one of these work items are and where they reside. So we have objectives and key results. They're going to reside in Viva Goals, and everything below, epic, scenario, feature, user story, task, those reside in ADO. He also brings in the different owners and the time periods in which each one of those are going to be reflected. So a good example is the key result. That's 1 to 12 months. It's an annual item, but the objectives can go, a little bit farther if need be, if you need to stretch. But now when you think about that, right, the time box. So what happens when I have a key result that goes a little farther than a year? What's the standard operating procedure for that? The playbook should answer that. You should have, just like Mark said, you should be able to have a single point where you can point people to. Now, yes, a playbook does take a lot of thought, but that thought and the effort you put in allows you to save so much time on the other end, because every question, multiply that by 1,800. So even if you think, well, I can answer that, and if somebody asks me, well, can you answer that 1,800 times? Do you have the cycles to answer that 1,800 times? If not, you make sure you put it in a playbook that you can reference it, or have a meeting like this and you can record it and then reference it, which we have in our playbooks, many of our recordings tagged in there so you can look at it. But the playbook was meant to answer those questions and to establish those procedures so that way everybody can operate asynchronously. So if I have a key result that I know is going to extend, I can refer to the playbook and go, okay, Mark's going to want us to change the time period, put a note that says I moved it from time period A to time period B, put a new start and end date, and then flag it with a tag that says moved through planning cycles. That type of granularity and that type of understanding of how the processes are, again, saves time. There's a there's a pattern to everything I've been saying here, which is all about saving time and reducing effort by utilizing this tool. And the playbook reduces so much of our effort when it comes to aligning all the stakeholders. So prior to us introducing Viva Goals as a go live, we wanted to make sure the playbook was available, because once everybody started utilizing the tool, we knew the questions were going to flow in. So that's kind of how we adopted the playbook. I want to see if there's any follow-up questions that you may have with it, because I can speak about this all day.
Well, I think it's a good point. I'll jump in real quick, because I think it's a good point. As we talked about change management earlier, this was a big part of our organizational change management, of rolling the playbook out, rolling the training out, getting people to buy in, getting the organization to buy in, and the delivering the why. This is delivering the how. So we landed the how. We touched on the why throughout the entire conversation, and this was really the how are we going to use the tool. So this was super impactful for us as an organization, as we really looked at how do we change our world and how do we deliver on that. So awesome, Johnny.
Yeah, and the good news is you will have access to their template for the playbook, so you can hopefully, you know, save yourself a little time and build off the work that has already been done here. I want to thank our speakers here for taking the time and sharing their knowledge, and just give you a few next steps. So you can register for our next event in the Viva Goals community, Viva Goals office hours, how to build and coach a healthy team with Viva Goals. So this is a great one to watch if you're interested in kind of cultural transformation in your organization, and how you can use Viva Goals to address that. And if you're not a Viva Goals customer yet and you want to sign up for a free trial, you can do that. So there's QR codes on the screen, and you can kind of scan and get what you need there. And then connect with our speakers on LinkedIn. So Mark and Johnny are truly like fonts of knowledge in this area, and I'm sure they would be happy to answer any other questions about, you know, what they've built. So you can scan the QR codes here and go right to their profile to request a connection. Mark and Johnny, any last words that you would want to share?
Yeah, I'll let Johnny speak first, because I've been doing all the talking.
Oh, no problem. So I just want to reiterate a few things that I said in this call. Again, adoption can be challenging, so slow is smooth, smooth is fast, but it's completely worth it. I love the fact that this tool saves us a lot of time as an engineering group. I can have my engineers focus on engineering. I would need to tap them on the shoulder once or twice to make sure that I have my check-in note updated properly, and then I can relay that up to the strategic team for a more holistic view. So as a summary of everything I stated today, as an engineering technical program manager, this has saved me a lot of time and allowed me to go on vacation very confidently that my status will be updated and they don't need me in the meeting. So I'm very grateful for the benefits that this has brought us.
Yeah, and I will just land on, you know, first of all, Lucy and team, thanks for putting this together. I think it's really important. I think we've only scratched the surface. So there's so much more that we could have touched on. We could have gone into so much depth and breadth with the playbook. And I think that shameless plug on why you should download that playbook is because you can review a lot of the cool things that we've been able to do that we didn't really get to deep dive into. And for us, this was a game changer. So I'll land with this. We were able to get away from, you know, the preps and the meetings and all of that to really getting back to, you know, really what are we trying to deliver, and let the engineers and the developers go do what they needed to do. But, you know, for us, Viva Goals completely helped us to elevate the conversations, helped us to remove that whole meeting prep time, as Johnny touched on multiple times. It was really changed the way that we are able to touch on the strategy. So not only why we're doing what we're doing, but how. So it's really, really changed the game. So thanks for your time today, everybody. We really, really appreciate it. And we hope that you do connect with us. We hope that you absolutely have the same passion that we had for Viva Goals. So it's a journey. So make sure you prep and you plan accordingly.
Thank you so much to our speakers again. And thanks for being with us today. If you're tuning in live or you're watching after the fact, we appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.